Yeah. Now they're recording us.
Oh, I don't want to forget to turn it on when it starts and it's getting close. So.
Oh, now we have to quit talking about Angelina.
Right. Angelina, Dan, Jesse. We can talk about Carol though.
Well, I think Dan Jesse gave another perspective to the city council.
Yeah.
Whether you agreed with him or not, he gave another perspective that should always be considered.
Yeah. I've considered, what do you think, David, about, tell me if it's a stupid idea, but writing to Paulina and saying, you know, suggesting someone on the planning commission on the other side of 101. You know, Carl always brought to us a different perspective, which was nice.
True.
What do you think about that? Is that overstepping?
I agree. The only thing I would consider, though, is a lot of the folks that live on the other side of 101 have not been in Gerhardt very much and don't really grasp the character and the personality of a lot of the people in Gerhardt. Now, there is a perspective that they can bring, and I would welcome that perspective, because we don't all need to be people from Southwest Portland, you know, the hills in Southwest Portland. So regardless of that comment, I would respect anybody from the other side of the highway, because that is Gerhardt.
Yeah, we forget their Gerhardt.
And all of their neighbors on the east side of 101 would come to them and chat.
Yeah. It's a thought. Did you blow it? Been watching the Olympics. What can I say?
I watched them for a little while, but I kind of gave up on it, because if the United States doesn't win a gold medal, you don't know anything about who won the gold medal. You know, they say, oh, Sweden won the gold medal. Now back to the American team. Well, what about the Swedish gold medal winner?
They have the Swedish TV station to talk about them.
Yeah, but I would like to know about the Swedish gold medal winner.
Oh,
That's just because they talk funny.
Yeah. Well, when we were over in Spain when the Tour de France was going on,
Oh yeah,
and we were getting the broadcast in German.
Oh really?
Which I had years. I have a major in German actually, so it was really interesting. But realize the German TV station only focused on the German writers.
Okay, I get it. I get it. Back in are you there, Jenny?
Yeah.
Back in 1972.
Yeah.
A friend of Betty's and mine entered a horse in the Olympic equestrian team.
Yeah.
And she won a silver medal with that horse.
Yeah.
And that was the days when they had equestrian riding during the daytime, prime time, when you could watch it.
Yeah.
And so the rider who actually lives in Gerhardt, Kevin Freeman, and the owner, Jerry Pearson, they swapped the silver medal every other year to each other's mantle. So remember, that was the year that the Palestinians raided the Israeli wrestling team.
Yeah.
The 72 Olympics.
72.
It was very memorable. Between our friend and the hostage taking, it was quite the Olympics.
Have you been to the Olympic side of Munich where all that happened?
Oh no, I haven't. I've never been to Germany.
Oh, we went there, Munich, and of course speaking German helped. And it's very eerie there because the Olympic site is actually built on hills that were created by the rubble from World War II.
From the rubble from the war.
And it's creepy. I don't know how to explain it. It's just creepy.
I understand. There's got to be.
Okay.
We'll talk about that more later.
Okay, so I've got Dawn and I've got Sharon, I've got David.
Hi.
I've got Nancy, who is Russ. And I'm I'm
Hi, Russ.
missing Terry. Is that all? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I'm missing Terry. Angelina, do you know if Terry's joining us? Have we heard anything?
I haven't heard anything. He hasn't contacted me or anything, so I don't know if
Okay.
he's having trouble or.
He usually phones in, but I'm not seeing anything. Are you going to be the administrator tonight?
Yes.
Okay, so
Lucky you.
last meeting when you were out, yeah, we had people on the phone that kept making background
Making
noise.
noise.
So there's a way you can mute them from your place, isn't there?
Yes.
So if that's happening, that's me just asking ahead of time because Carol was trying to talk and there kept being this other noise going on. So I don't think we'll have any problem. It's usually people on the phones.
Okay.
Okay. So Carol, it's 6 o'clock. Should I start the meeting?
Yes, go ahead, Mrs. President.
Okay, Mrs. Planner. All right, it is 6 o'clock. I call to order the February 10th meeting of the Gerhardt Planning Commission. Attending, we have Sharon and David and Don, who used to be there. Oh, he's back. Russ is here someplace.
You sure?
And Ginny Gideon. So we've got 5 right now.
Oh, there's Russ.
Yeah,
This
Russ
is
is
Terry
here
Graff.
someplace. Oh, here's Terry. Okay. And Terry's here. Good evening, Terry. We started.
Good.
And Chad's there. Okay. The first thing we have on the agenda is the consent agenda, includes the minutes from January 13th, 2022, the financial report from January 31st, 2022, the letter from Scoffy, and I had asked Angelina send out also the email I received from Austin resigning from the Planning Commission. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
David
From
moved.
David.
And do I have a second?
Second.
A second from Sharon. All those in favor say aye.
Can I make one comment?
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Dawn. Yes, you had discussion. I'm sorry. I forgot to call for discussion.
Right. So, and I think Angelina maybe addressed this, but my name was not included in the last 2 packets. So if that's fixed, then I'm all for it.
Yeah,
I-
I fixed that. I was going off of Cheryl's old spreadsheets. I was using the templates and I fixed it. It's all fixed. It's good on the website.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, Dawn. We'll let you now come and you can be Dawn. Okay. Anything else? Seeing nothing else, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right, the consent agenda is accepted. We have report from staff and Chad Sweet, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Madam President and Commissioners. I appreciate that. I'll keep it brief today.
Can you turn up your volume a little bit?
Turn it down?
Up.
Uh,
You're
That's my microphone. So how about I just talk a little louder?
okay.
Does that work all right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a few things going on, here at City Hall, but things have been manageable. And in big part of that is because of, again, the introduction of Angelina into our office has been extremely helpful as she's taken on a bigger job than what was there before. And it's just been making planning and the building side go as smoothly as it can during this period of time. Right now, we're working on a lot of pieces of property that are in some very different spots here in Gerhardt. They're the last properties to be developed or those that were held aside for a period of time for multiple reasons. Difficult to build on, near wetlands, no water source to them. And so we've been working with a lot of that. It's been keeping us on our toes, but it seems to be going very well. The building department itself is coming together again. Mark Bryan is no longer with us. We haven't contracted with his company again, and we've been using Leonard Brogdon as our building official. And the transition period is going well. Angelina's done a lot of work with the state on getting our program up to date and certified along the lines of what they're looking for in order for us to keep a third-party relationship with our building official, because the city of Gearhart's being so small, we don't pay a salary for a building official. We pay them basically a portion of the building permit fees. And the state has been difficult about that, but they do have a process now. We've gone through it, and thank goodness for Angela that we got through it, and we'll be able to maintain that program. So we'll be able to continue to take care of our builders and our residents with good customer service, rather than having to go with another organization or even with the county is something we didn't want to do. So that's going really well. Vacation rentals are going well as well. We haven't had many complaints about vacation rentals at all since the beginning of this ordinance. And so far this year, we're well above what we anticipated for income for the incoming taxes. And I had that pulled up just a few seconds ago. My apologies. Let's see, city council, city administrator, treasurer's report, revenue that just came in for all of the short-term vacation rentals for the town. Right now, we're at about 494,000. I anticipated about 380,000 for the year, but I think with COVID, we had a lot more visitors than what we anticipated. So that's been interesting. So budget wise, in regards to planning and things like that, we're in good shape. The city of Gearhart as a whole is in very good shape. We should be able to continue to put monies towards our reserve accounts. Emergency cash day is going to be coming up here real quick. That is, let's just double check here. Let's see.
That's CACHE, right? Not CASH.
Correct.
Emergency cash?
Correct. Yeah, we haven't come up with a festival where we just give away cash yet, but you know, I think that would be interesting here. I'm going to get that update figure here and I'll get it to you at the end. I'm sorry. I just had to restart my computer just as this was starting. So I lost all of my pages.
If I can interject, Chad, the military pronounces it cachet. That way they don't mix it up with cash.
That would be important. All right. I'll take that into consideration. The other portion that I wanted to talk to you about, I'm going to share my screen about, is having to do with the fire station. And right here, share screen. And those of you that are on small screens, my apologies. I'm going to do my best to make this a little bit bigger for you. I don't know if that works or not. Okay. So the city council went ahead and resolved number 969 to move forward with the May 17th election. City staff, along with a lot of professionals, we've been working on this project for a long time. We have gone through many iterations and many locations for the fire department. And when the High Point area fell through, both because of cost and the willingness of the ownership to actually sell it to us, without having to go through eminent domain, it just became an untenable situation. So at that time, we had a group of investors that bought the Fraser property north of town. They had come up with a deal that said that we could build a fire station up on the dune within about 2.5 acres within their property if they were able to come into the city for a higher more homes per acre than what they could out with the county. So after working with the council, architects, engineers, and a lot of other people, we came across that piece of property, designed for it, and went ahead and costed out. And there was a cost increase from the last time we tried to do this. We're now up to about 14.5 million. for the project, and that's an up to price. What we've been doing with that is, sorry, I'm getting a bunch of feedback here, so I'm trying to talk through that the best that I can. Is the 14.5 million was done using what's called a program. People are wondering how we came across the size of this fire station and why we decided to make it 13,000 square feet. And the short answer in the program and the way that this station was designed was on an individual room by individual room. We took a look at what we were doing and what we've been doing since 1958 in the fire station, what's been working and how much room we've had. Then we looked at the future and looked at bathrooms and meeting space and truck storage and all of the things that go into firefighting and police stations. And on an individual room by individual, we kind of came up with a size that would work and the features that we wanted and discussed those. The kitchen was separate than the meeting room, which was separate from the office space. And then once we came up with all of those requirements, we had an approximate square footage of about 13,000 square feet. And that's a building that should get us through for the next 30, maybe 50 years if we're lucky, in growth for the fire station. I know you've seen reports of what we've been doing lately. We've had huge increases in our fire calls over the last few years, 40% year over year, essentially. But this last year was incredibly busy. We finished 2021 with over 660 calls. Previous year was about 500. And so looking at the design, the 13,000 square feet, and the location, we came up with these pricing. I wanted to show you a few things of what that means before we get into what the actual fire station costs. And I'm going to have to fix this here so that I can see what we're doing. This here on the page, and all of this is available online at cityofdeerheart.com. It's under the pages having to do with fire station, but it's also on last city council meetings docket. This is the bond analysis that we came up with using DA Davidson, who issues bonds here in Oregon and across the United States. They've been helping us with this, these figures. And what this shows is on the right-hand side in the red is essentially what we're looking at. We're looking at a project fund amount of about 14.349 million at the top. And that's what it could be. And we're hoping worst case scenario. The money costs, what that would cost for per household in Gearhart, business owner, household, any property based on assessed value, not real market value, but assessed value, would be at about $1.15 per thousand is what this these 14.5 or up to 14.5 would cost. So essentially from today to when we take this bond out, your tax increase would be $1.15 per thousand for this bond. But we did some work, and if you look on the right-hand side, you can kind of see where we're at. The dates start on the left-hand side of the show. So if you look at 2023 and you take it all the way across to the level bond levy rates, that's in the red section, you're looking at $1.15 increase, which would bring our post-issuance total levies, this includes the water bonds as well, to about $2.28 per thousand. So it's an $1.15 per raise. But in all actuality, that's not quite going to happen. Because if you remember over the last year, we worked hard on trying to refinance our previous water bond. A few years before that, we refinanced that. The first bond, we have two bonds out for that. So if you add that $1.15 minus what we've saved in the refinancing for the bonds, the actual cost per thousand is going to increase for a Gearhart homeowner of about 80 cents per thousand compared to where we are right now, because we'll realize those savings in the refinancing. Now, that 80 cents per thousand or so will last about 3 years. And then after that, after the 3 years, one of our water bonds will drop off to the tune of about $1 a thousand. So we will actually be right about very close to what we're paying right now in our taxes for the city of Deerheart, starting in 2026. In 2026, the rates will drop back down and your bond amount will be almost equal to plus or minus about 20 cents per thousand compared to what it is right at this moment. And that bond then will continue until it's paid off in 2042. It's a 20-year bond.
Yeah.
I wanted to stop there for a minute and see if anybody had any questions from the Planning Commission. Anyway, visitors can be a little bit later if they have anything, but from the Planning Commission, did you have any questions about that portion of this?
I have a question. Chad, at the city council meeting, is it D.A. Davidson?
D.A. Davidson, yes.
So he was explaining that the bond rate is also tied to the market, which is probably tied to the Fed, and that's to be determined, right? So it could change higher or even lower based on that. So it's kind of an unknown figure starting what, in a year or two, and then over the next 20 years. Is that right?
Correct. It is a little bit, it is an unknown figure. We're not sure how far things are going to go, but we've been studying this with D.A. Davidson for some time. So we waited until the very last moment to run these numbers until just before the city council meeting. And that incorporated the first bond or the first interest rate increase that the Feds did. Then the second thing that we did with D.A. Davidson is we added 75 basis points from what it is today to what we think it's going to be. And if we were to go out to market, we'd be looking at market about August. So we added 75 basis points or 0.75% to that in anticipation of the next round of bond rates. With all that being said, even with the next two lifts in regards to interest rates, we still anticipate this being money that is fairly inexpensive. The bond rates are at a historic low right now. So even with 2 or maybe even 3 increases, we should still be into some very good money in regards to a GO bond, which is the cheapest kind of money that a city can get into. A GO bond is very secure for its investors, so we get the best interest rates, much better than going out to market with any other bank. And we've investigated those all sorts of different ways. So thank you for that question. In regards to the refunding of the bonds or the bonds that are coming out and the tax rate implications to that, are there any other questions from the Planning Commission? All right. Again, this is available online. We won't talk about deferred principal. This is another way that we can do it to keep the rates low for the next 3 years and not take quite of an increase. But anytime you do deferred payments on a principal, you know you're just paying more interest. And it really was like throwing a couple of $100,000 out the window. It's just not a good investment strategy. So we are not going with deferred principal. We're going to take the bond interest rates as they are coming without deferring the principal payments to the future. So I think that that's just good common sense. The cost, the construction cost for the fire police resiliency station. This is a basic design we've done with Pivot Architecture. We have not gone through a full design review or a design with them. A full design and taking care of everything will be well over $1 million to accomplish over the period of time. But we've done some preliminary design phase, and this is a company that's built fire stations before. They're currently building 2 fire stations. And currently one of those fire stations is being built in a resilient manner having to do with tsunami. So they've been through this, but we're looking at here at the top of this page is the building itself is looking at about 10.996. That's approximately 300 and, oh, I was going to have this figure here for you. It was on my other sheet. It's about 325 a square foot. The conversation about what costs so much with critical infrastructure buildings, and the people just have a hard time understanding of our location, where we're at here on the Oregon coast. We are required to build with another building code using critical infrastructure designs. Because of where we're located and our potential for a 9-point earthquake, because where we're located for the potential tsunami and wind from just normal everyday storms, our building has to be built very resiliently. So it's expensive. But if you divide that, if you take that cost per square foot and you multiply it by any home that's for sale right now, it's very similar. The cost for everything has just gone through the roof, and we've tried to go ahead and track that. The period of time that we started doing this about 6 months ago to now, we've incurred another approximately $330,000 in additional monies needed just to buy the same supplies. And I don't need to go into why all the supply chain issues are happening, but every year that's going to continue to escalate. The other escalation that we have in there for $320,000 is knowing that we're not going to be breaking ground until potentially, September of 2023 on this project if it goes through. So we've anticipated that, we've anticipated the interest rates, and we've added contingencies in on everything as well. Our goal is to come in under budget. And we do not want to get stuck with having something that we want to build but cannot because we don't have enough money after promises made. So we've been very, very careful looking at those contingencies. So after 10.9 for the building itself and the construction, then you've got all sorts of different things: design, you have permit and regulatory fees, construction phase related with testing and change orders anticipated, equipment and systems, and then some more geotechnical engineering, some site survey and that sort of thing. So that adds about $3 million to the entire project. An overall project contingency of 2% in addition to everything else of $281,000 for a total estimated project cost of $14.349. So we're trying to authorize up to 14.5 just in case. Here's the costs, approximate square foot costs of what we're looking at. Fire station being at about $325 per square foot for a 2-story wood framed with hose tower. All the earthwork, the site improvements, the landscaping are in here. Site remediation. A couple of the interesting figures that are a little bit higher are the East Vehicular Access Road for up to $224 plus $550,000. This is for the road that goes down east towards Highway 101. We want to make sure it's hardened and built correctly so that we have egress and ingress from the fire station. And then because it makes sense for a resilient fire station or the structure such as this to have another vehicular access road out of it for a second way, that costs an additional $472 approximately. And then all the other fees. So just for the building and site construction, 6.8. Then you have our design estimating contingencies of up to 17%, which is high. That's a big number, that 1.16 and 17% contingency. But I don't think it's as high as it used to be because of the way that the market and price of supplies and all of that. So we wanted to make sure that we had enough in there. Another thing we added was 1.5% for a resiliency factor. That's doing things just to take the utilities and all of that move up to this fire station and harden them for earthquake, for storms, for weather. General conditions plus 2% coastal. Just because we're so far away from a metropolitan area, we added some extra because we know there's going to be more expenses for any larger company that comes out here and does this. Insurance, profit overhead, all the way down to the 10. Markups total of 3.851 for a construction total of 10,676. Any initial questions about that from the Planning Commission? Okay. This is the basic design. This is going to change. But this was part of our program that I was talking about, where we took each individual room and tried to figure out what we really needed for storage, for restrooms, for meeting space, kitchen, offices, and police station. I won't get into a lot of detail about this, but this is, again, and according, there's some word, people out there are thinking we're building some sort of Taj Mahal. This is going to be a station that's going to be adequate for us and for some time to come, but it's nothing really fancy. It is a fire station, and it's made to operate as one. It's made to be as efficient and as safe as possible for our firefighters. They need additional bathroom space. Our firefighters have changed over the years. We've got almost a third of our firefighters are females these days, which is fantastic, but it creates all these issues, especially when we're sharing one bathroom right now with no shower and no decontamination. So those things are necessary. Just a few offices. This will also act as an emergency operations center in the future. So it will be designed to be able to help us in any cases, such as the 2007 storm. We'll have a much more robust communication system within here, and it'll operate really well. But if you look closely at these, there's also on the top floor, there's looking at dorm rooms. And this is really the future of volunteer firefighting, is using interns, helping them with their education, allowing them to stay at the fire station. It's really been helpful for us. We've been running this program already for about 5 years. We've run between 1 and 2 interns. They're absolutely wonderful. They've helped us with our response times, and with the growing call volume, I don't know how we would have been able to do it without them. So that's something that we want to incorporate into the future of this particular facility. Any quick
Question, Chad?
Yes, sir.
David Smith. Can I be in contact with you in the future about associating Carl Anderson's name with some kind of emergency communications facility or setup within this building?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, as a matter of fact, because Carl Anderson, and I've been working with his wife for a little while now on the new radio for Carl. He's always in the back of my head. He was always very, very, very important in regards to our resiliency and helping us with communications. We did just receive, and we have now, a super briefcase portable ham radio that's battery powered with backups, and it has a solar charging system. And that was all done with the money that some of you in the Planning Commission donated as well towards Carl Anderson. We just finished that project and it turned out great. And so we will be incorporating some of that into what we currently do, and then it will move up into this fire department as well as part of our communications package. So
Okay,
Carl
thanks.
Anderson is alive and well here in the City Hall. We've been working on that project for some time.
Okay, thanks.
Moving down, this is the site that we're looking at. I've got a better picture of this, but just to get you oriented, here's Highway 101. If you can see my mouse moving up and down. And here is Highlands Lane. So this is a site, approximately 2.5 acres up on top of the dune, that sits naturally at about 68 feet. There are ports that are 72 right now. So it's a good open space for us. It'll fit the fire station well. It'll have some extra space for future growth if we need that, or at least just some open area reserved, again, for assembly, helicopter use if we needed to. There's not going to be a fancy pad there, but a grassy area. And it will also incorporate into the future park that comes down there. I think that there's a nice big hill in there, and I think that bringing this part of the community, bringing the fire station into this community through the park is, I think, very positive as well. And I think a park in this area is very positive for all the people that live out into this area in town to get to a park more easily, as well as the people that live right across Highway 101 on the east side, which is always a challenge. But it'll be a nice area for a lot of those people that live on the east to come to this park, and the fire station will be part of that. It'll be part of the community. This is a basic design that we ran out with our architects about what the actual neighborhood looks like. We're looking at about 45 homes or so going into this loop, whereas before, if they just stuck with the county, they would have about 22, 25 homes. If they come into the city's urban growth boundary, or we do a land swap to bring that in, then they're looking at approximately 45 homes in that area. The future park is delineated there on the left-hand side. Maybe some trails that go up into the fire station. Those are not roadways, those are walking trails. And the way that the layout and the elevation of the site is, that road to the east to Highway 101, which is the proposed main access for the fire station itself, and a secondary access that goes off towards the north, towards Highlands Lane, would cut in there as well. But there will be no access from the highway through the station into the neighborhood. That's not our intention. We don't want to create that kind of traffic issue at the proposed main access road. That's more for Highlands. And we already know that there's some challenges at Highlands. There's some traffic that goes through there. In July of last year, we clocked 50,000 cars that went back and forth over a period of 30 days. 50,000 cars. Now that was away from 4th of July. We didn't do 4th of July in there, but there was a couple of clam tides in there for sure. So what is the impact? What is the impact for this area? You've already got neighborhoods that have been using Highlands Lanes for years. They have seen an increase in traffic. We are not anticipating a light at this section yet. In the future, that could be an issue, something that we move for. But I don't think that the traffic from this fire station is going to create a major problem there. And I'm not sure how the traffic from those 45 homes on Highlands Lane would actually impact. There's going to be an impact, but 45 homes, and if we look at about 50% of them being occupied full time, which is pretty typical for Deerheart, it is going to have an impact. A light at Highlands Lane and Highway 101 would be approximately $2 million in additional cost. And right now, it's just not justified at this moment, but we'll continue to do studies and watch that. And we're going to take a lot of input from people as we get close that live in that area that certainly have some opinions about it. Any quick questions about the conceptual site plan here?
A comment, Chad, from David.
Please.
Apparently the new resiliency station is set back from the main street there, Highlands Lane.
Yes.
Such that it will not have much of a visual impact on the traffic going in and out of Highlands?
No, they may not even see the building. They may see part of the roof line, but we got to keep in mind that everything that Deerheart does, we always try to keep it more residential in character, such as what we did with the water treatment facility. So this is going to have the same sort of an effect. We're not trying to do a building that's going to stick out and be a big deal. We want it to match its environment, the wooded area, the dune area, and the grasses. We want to keep within the natural colors. We want to try to minimize the building in every way that we can rather than make it bigger, but there will be some things about it. There'll be a hose tower up there with some communication, but we'll, again, minimize that to make it look as residential as possible.
Well, the only thing I'm doing is comparing this to Warrenton's fire station, police station, Astoria's fire and police station, Cannon Beach fire station. Those are all definitely part of the main community. They're not shielded. They're not set back. They're showing the citizens that are paying for it, this is what you're paying for, and look how this is working within our community. And this seems to be kind of like they tried to stick it back in a corner to me.
Yeah. And
I'm not trying to redo the whole site plan at this point or anything like that, but that's just how it appears, because a lot of the perception is what people think about what they're paying for. And if they don't see it, they don't know what they're paying for.
Yeah, the other issue about that is a lot of people are worried about bringing the fire station out of the center of town over here, and it kind of gets rid of that neighborhood feel. It's kind of neat to go walk by the fire station downtown. If anybody loves its location more than I don't know, because I get to respond right next door, and it's a really good thing, or I can go hang out at the fire station. Unfortunately, all those fire stations that you mentioned, including our current one, are all in the tsunami inundation zone. All of them. Astoria, Cannon Beach, Seaside,
Warrenton.
All of those stations are in the inundation zone. All of those stations are in a low spot on the inundation zone. I can't remember the actual footage of Cannon Beach. They might be a little bit higher up and not much farther. Not higher than this. This will be the most resilient fire station out of all of those in regards to this dune. And I think that the future park and incorporating that with the fire station, I think that there will be an area where people will be able to see the fire station and the police station and be a part of it and incorporate it into that park as well. Give something for this end of the community if that's the direction we were going to go. And as you know, we just don't have any higher places that would be better in an inundation. And I'm going to show you that here in just a minute. These are some basic conceptuals. We're not there yet, but this is what it could look like. This is coming from the southeast to the northwest. And this is what it would look like coming from the northeast to the southwest. The pages that I wanted to show you are these. These are some new inundation maps that we worked with Dogami, Department of Geological and Industries, and with architects. This is Gearhart as it is now. This red and blue dot is currently where City Hall and the police station are. This yellow dot here is where the grade school was, where that building is still located, because a lot of people have still thought that the grade school would be a really good spot for this fire station. And it is big enough and it's beautiful, it's a beautiful piece of property. It's just not in the right location, and I'll show you why. The other thing that we added was cross sections for elevations, and these are down below right here. Kind of shows the shape of what these dunes are at 2 locations. Those 2 locations are lines A that go through the new fire station site. That's what this green circle, red rectangle are. And in B, there's another cross section that we did right through the current fire station school sites. And so that's what Gearhart looks like. And there's about 20 feet in between each one of those lines. So we went ahead and looked at the inundation impacts with Dogami's help, and they mapped out what a small tsunami would look like under these scenarios. Here's the location of the new station. Here's Highlands Lane and Highway 101. This is a small tsunami, which is a small percentage of the probability of what the tsunami would look like. This is on the lower end of the tsunami, which in all probability could be around 20% possible, maybe, and that's pretty high. This shows that it inundates the school for sure and the basin areas within Gearhart. But currently, the small tsunami does not hit the current fire station, police station. It just comes up just past the Neocoxy a little bit. It does flood in quite a few homes on near G Street and Little Beach. And then McCormick Garden Road towards the east is a very difficult place. I know a lot of people want to evacuate that direction, but it's a very dangerous direction because it's swamp and it will become an instant lake. So that's a small, and you can see the water buildup on the small side and some of the valleys that are in there. If we look at a medium, this is the most probable type of tsunami that Gearhart will probably see based on statistics. Right? Medium, middle, probable. It's got a greater reach. We're looking at wave up to 40, 45 foot height as far as flooding goes. The flooding again will mostly come from behind Gearhart. And this does put the fire station and the current police station under about 10 to 15 feet of water. And the school is definitely inundated at that point. So is a lot of cottage. If we go over to the large, and you see these again, this water is shown on these cross sections of what that would look like. This is a large tsunami up to 50, 55 feet. The new fire station location is still dry in that scenario. Our assembly areas within Gearhart where the black A's are also still dry, as well as some spot just on South Ocean where you see this dry area up here. This is the reason right here that we try to get people to move to the west when they're evacuating for a tsunami. The east is dangerous. Slides, flooding, everything will happen there first. The swamps will subside maybe 4, maybe 6 feet. So you'll have a new permanent lake there, and that'll happen instantly. So that's why we're trying so hard to get something within Deerheart, because this is survivable. You see, this is something that we can deal with. It'll be devastating. But if we're prepared, we'll be able to recover faster. If we're not prepared, the recovery will take a much longer time. Then we did the extra large, the one that everybody is concerned about. This is the one that sells the magazines and the movies. This is the worst case scenario from all the buildup that they've done and the studies that they've done for the past 30 years. And this shows that even in the extra large, and this is with subsidence calculated in. So this is where we expect the ground to go down 6 feet, potentially. With that included in the friction, in the extra large, there are still dry spaces within Deerheart, and the fire station location is one of them. It's one of the higher ones. And this dune here has been here for a long time, about 2,000 to 2,500 years longer than the dune that South Ocean and the Palisades has been on. So its structural makeup of sand is a lot more robust. We don't have to do as much to the foundation to make something work very well here and be resilient. But the additional cost here in this particular location is getting the access both on the east and the west side. That's going to cost a little bit of extra money. So those are the new impact maps, and that shows here in the blue along the cross sections as well. And you can see the proposed station site is just barely out of it. So if everybody's, who's worked through this and their estimations are correct, this is the approximate scenarios we're looking at, best guess. And that's why we picked the location that we did. Initially, we picked this location, but it just wasn't available to us. The owners back then didn't want to sell it. So it scored lower for a couple of different reasons. But after spending time and really researching this and looking at all the different ways that this particular site could enhance what it is that we do with our fire department, it makes really good sense to us. So now we just get to see, taxes and whether or not the community is wanting to pay for this. We've definitely gotten our use out of the station that's been there since 1958. We've done a good job with that as a community, but it is time to replace it. It has to be replaced. And no matter where we put it, in any location that we can come up with, we're still looking at about 14.5 million. And I would not hesitate to say that every year we don't do this, we're looking at a potential $1 million increase in the costs. I don't think we're going to be able to value engineer it down to past 13,000 square feet without really getting into a fire department that won't function for us currently, as well as the next 20, 30, or 40 years. Any questions about any of that?
I had a question back a ways, Chad, but you were enjoying talking. I have been asked repeatedly about any signal out on 101. And I'm not only asking that for people that have asked me about, now you've said no signal at Highlands, but yesterday I was going by a rural fire station to the north, ambulance was there. I'm coming along at 55. Yes, I was going the speed limit. And he puts on his lights and I go, I can't stop. If I stop, I'm going to slam into the side of the ambulance, which is probably not going to do a lot of good. There's no warning there. I'm asking, can it be such if this location goes ahead, we can put some kind of flashers, up the way or something, so people would know that there's going to be an emergency vehicle coming out, some kind of signage.
Yeah, I understand that concern. I think that that's valid as well. The science on whether or not there's a light at a fire station intersection is an interesting science. In my I think this is my 25th year now. We've never had an accident with fire trucks going out onto Highway 101. We've never had an accident with a fire truck.
But you're going out the light.
We train on, no, actually the lights are more dangerous.
Okay.
So the reason for that is that when you're coming down Pacific Way from the fire station, and you're doing lights and sirens, and let's say it's a structure fire, so you're going pretty quickly, and you come up to a light, and that light is red to the fire truck, right? What we do is we stop every time and we poke out with our yellow trucks and our lights. Eventually people slow down. But what they're looking at primarily is they're looking up at the green light that's in their lane, and in their mind, automatically, they think it's my turn to go. I don't, some people can't reason that quickly to understand that there's a fire station there. So we know that about people, and we study this. So we're very careful when we poke out into anywhere. So that's where lights are actually a little bit more dangerous, because when they are green and the traffic is moving and the fire truck is trying to get them to stop, people don't understand that. We actually have a little easier time coming out of a traffic controlled light system. And the way that it is our fire trucks do not change the color of the lights. That is something that is not used very much, because when that happens suddenly and the traffic flow is disrupted out of norm, it actually creates more problems. So coming out of a non-lit or an intersection without a light is actually a little bit safer for us. And that's through a lot of years of experience. And you can read that in a lot of the firehouse trade magazines as well.
Well, I just know that at nighttime, when it is raining and dark in Oregon, even trying to find Highlands to turn on is difficult. It is very dark up there. There are no street lights, no, the big lights to light an intersection. There is only one at Highlands that occasionally just goes black, like about every 4 months.
Okay, I think that's a good comment. And what I'll do is I wrote that down. We'll talk about the lighting as well, but I am in communication with Oregon Department of Transportation about this project. And so far it's an administrative decision to put the type of driveways on that we want to, but they have been involved, and we're working with their planner, Ryan, I'm sorry, his name's escaping me. Carol, can you help me here? Our planner with ODOT.
Oh, Ken Schonkweiler.
Ken, and he's been absolutely fantastic to work with. And so he is also in on this project, is happy to see that your heart's, trying to do what we're doing, and has been assisting us in that. So I'll take that comment there.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions, Dawn?
I have a question. Chad, thank you. These maps especially are pretty profound, I think. A lot of the discussion, scuttlebutt, what have you, is why not build it at the same location? And I think your map obviously lays that out. But there's two questions I have for that. One is in the comprehensive plan, and maybe Carol or someone can clarify this, but one of the policies related to development in high tsunami risk areas says that the comprehensive plan prohibits the development of certain essential facilities, which I presume the fire station is, in an L tsunami inundation area. So as a planning commission who follows the comprehensive plan, aren't we then required to not allow a fire station to be built in an L tsunami situation? Am I reading that right?
I'm going to ask for Carol's help a little bit in that, but I think that it is definitely, the comprehensive plan as a filter for what this community wanted to be. And I'm impressed that they even took that into consideration back then. And especially now, since we've updated the plan to incorporate the tsunami overlay zone, which has other requirements in it as well. And so without an exception, really, the city is not supposed to be able to put any critical infrastructure under an elevation of 50 feet. Currently, the elevation of the fire station is at 22. So if we were to build in this current location again, we would be putting the fire station into the most probable tsunami inundation zone, which is a medium. And so that's $14.5 million in the inundation zone, which it just seems like that's an opportunity for us to get out of it.
So did the state of Oregon eliminate a rule for developing essential facilities within a tsunami inundation zone? However, our comprehensive plan prohibits it. So are we guided by which one of those is our what do we follow in that situation?
Well, I'm not too sure how to use the exact terminology, but a city can go ahead and determine what it wants to be and what its priorities are. And that's what the city did when it was establishing both that overlay zone and its comprehensive plan. It established what it wanted to be, and then we followed those rules, use that as a filter through everything. So yes, the state did reverse its decision, making it difficult for cities to put this type of infrastructure into inundation zone, because some cities said it was near impossible for them because they didn't have what Gearhart has, which is this elevation and these dunes. So we're very lucky to have those. The other thing that they didn't take into consideration when they reversed that decision is that there was already built into that very law, that ORS, that there could be an exception if the city could prove that A, there is no place to go, B, they tried to go there, but it failed through the voters, whether that be through a bond or land use issues. If all of those things happened, then the state had a program to where you could actually work and put your critical infrastructure back into the inundation zone because you don't have any other options. We can't do that yet because we have options.
Because we have
And
options. Yeah.
I don't want to speak for the city council necessarily, but on an individual basis, none of them are interested in putting the fire station back to where it currently is, based on the information that we have of a pending tsunami, that with all the evidence, something's going to happen, and we don't know exactly when, but soon, and we don't know exactly how. It's inevitable. It's just how we're going to prepare. And if we were to rebuild it in its current location, there are some problems with where do we, run a fire station while our other fire station is being built, because we'd be without. That's one problem. The other issue is that this area was all built on fill. Old Gearhart and the actual elevation of Gearhart is down where the Trails End Arts Association is. Everything that's been built up around it has been put onto fill. So that's something that we'd have to take care of as well, which makes the foundation a little bit more expensive. The other thing that will make the foundation expensive in this current location is we're going to have to build it because it's much closer to the aquifer, and it will be much more impacted in liquefaction, the shaking of wet sand. Because we're closer to the aquifer in this particular location, that effect will be great. Whereas the effect will be almost non-existent in its new location because of its distance from the aquifer. I can go all day about the science about that, and it has been shown in some of the previous documents that we have, and we're going to reissue those as well.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from any other commissioners? Okay, I don't see anything, Chad. Do you have anything else to report?
Not yet, man. No, I'm
That's
good.
good, because that was a half hour. 15 minutes you told me today. Okay.
This is Terry Graff. Could I make one comment?
Yes, Terry.
I don't know if anybody else read it, but in the New York Times within the last couple of weeks, they did an article on what will happen if there's a major earthquake off our coast and there's a tsunami. And one of the towns that they mentioned was Gerhardt, Oregon. It's not the reason we wanted to make the New York Times, but there we are. So I think what we are talking about tonight is really on the right track.
Thank you, Terry. And I saw that New York Times article as well, and they did mention Gearhart. But I think what they also will be mentioning in Gearhart very soon is some of the other things that we're doing that are helping us with this. We've written grants, and over the last 2 years, we've bought well over $100,000 worth of supplies that we have in the hills and behind us. We have been doing a lot of things for resiliency, for communication, and working on this fire station thing. So the community is doing its best to try to remain as resilient as possible. But yeah, I think that this will be a big deal.
Well, Chad, what you said just tells me that we're doing a lot right in Gerhardt.
Thank you, Terry. And at that, I don't have anything else at the moment.
Okay, so can you take down your picture?
I can, ma'am. Yes.
I am glad to see that I'll survive, except the extra large. Okay, great.
We have a chance.
Carol, it's your turn.
Just to keep the agenda moving on, I quickly want to recognize Austin Tomlinson and his contribution to the Planning Commission and to the city. He was an excellent attender to the meetings, always came prepared. He had a technical expertise that came in handy, and He spent, you know, he's on the advisory committee for the parks plan and provided a lot of assistance in the citizen involvement section of that. I mean, hours of time and work. So just wanted to get that on the record.
Awesome, thank you. Angelina, did you have anything?
No, not currently.
Okay, put you on a spot, you're just, yeah. Okay, commissioners, is there any concerns you have that you want to bring up right now? I'm not saying anything. I'll bring up my concern I talked to David about earlier. And I know everyone in City Hall is just doing as much as they can, but when I get stuff on Thursday before the meeting, I don't have time to review it as thoroughly as I would like to. So,
The fire station stuff was kind of a last minute thing.
I'm-
Chad just wanted to go over and share. So I do apologize for that though.
no, I'm not blaming anyone. Believe me, I'm not. I'm saying personally, I just don't see it. Second Thursday is a horrible day for me. Not that I don't love planning commission. Goals list, need to look at the goals list. Is there any corrections, additions, thoughts?
None from David.
Not from David. Anyone else? I'm seeing silence out there. Terry? Anything?
No, nothing.
Okay, all right. So we're going to move ahead. This is a time for visitors' comments. If any visitor has something they'd like to address that is not on the agenda tonight, we'd like to hear from you. You will need to speak up if you want to say something. I'm not saying anything. Carol, you're waving your.
I'm sorry, did we get past correspondence? I don't have the,
Yes. We did that. We did that in the consent agenda.
just in case, you saw the letter, I just want to make sure everybody got the letter from Scofie regarding the school site, and that being Timmy and
Robert.
Robert, thank you, Bob. Letter, it's there and it's for information. Apparently it came on its own independently when nobody asked for it, and
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, it was indeed included in our packet. So
I figured it was, but if anybody might have missed it and wanted to talk about it,
Anyway,
okay.
okay, great.
yeah,
Candace, did you have something to say?
the most recent one was sinus rhythm, but I had 3 inconclusive in a row.
This is Chad, Candace. We could barely hear you.
Candace, did you have something to say? Candace Smith?
Yeah.
I don't think she's talking to the commission.
Okay, I think she's talking to someone else. All right. So we'll go ahead and move along. So we have public hearings tonight. We have 2 public hearings. As you know, the first one we have there is 22-01 CU application purpose and application for approval of conditional use permit to construct playground equipment in Centennial Park located in a Park P zone. I will first ask for clarification with Carol. Is this Gearhart Park or is this Centennial Park?
It came on the application as Gearhart Park. It was maybe informally named Centennial Park the year of the centennial when the garden was built and the rock was installed. And according to the city administrator, Chad, maybe wasn't an official naming, but I decided to call it that at this moment.
Okay, I think we just need to clarify what its name is for the record. So whatever it is, it's for that Centennial / Gerhart Park. So I'm going to open the hearing. And the first thing I do, of course, is I have to read a statement. This is a quasi judicial hearing. All persons testifying shall be deemed parties to the application and must provide their name and full mailing address if they wish to be notified of the decision, continuances, appeals, or other procedural actions required by the code. The city zoning code specifies applicable criteria to be relied upon in making a decision. Those criteria and findings of fact are in the city staff report. Public testimony should be limited to those criteria and findings of fact or to other city or state land use standards that the person testifying believes apply to the proposed land use action. Failure to raise an issue in person or in writing with sufficient detail to afford the hearing body and parties to the hearing an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes appeal to the City Council or Land Use Board of Appeals, or to seek damages in circuit court due to a condition of approval. Before the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may ask the Planning Commission for an opportunity to present additional relevant evidence, arguments, or testimony that is within the scope of the hearing. The hearings body shall grant the request by scheduling a date to finish the hearing, a continuance to a time and date certain, or by leaving the record open for additional evidence or argument or testimony pursuant to ORS 197.763(6)A through E. Commissioners, do you have a conflict of interest and ex parte contact or personal bias? And I will first say that I'm sure all of us have driven by the park area many, many times. So have visited the site one way or another. Does anyone have anything else to declare? Any conversations you had with anyone about this or anything like that? No. I did have a conversation. I spoke with Jeff Bowman 2 days ago, the Chief Jeff Bowman. I'm sorry, he's a neighbor, so I just call him Jeff. About the enforcement of limited hours for the park. And essentially summarizing what he said, not quoting, is that enforcement would be a separate issue to be dealt with if we decided to have park only open at daylight hours. It would be the only park in Gerhart that would have that limitation. And people do use that area to walk across, shortcut from one street to another street, walk their dogs at midnight, go out for evening strolls or players. So it might be difficult for enforcement, but that was my conversation. So I've disclosed that. To the audience, anyone listening in, are there any challenges to the commission's ability to make an impartial decision? Seeing none, it is time for the staff report. Carol.
Okay, well, so this is a request for a conditional use permit to put in new playground equipment in the Centennial Gerhart Park. For the last week, the criteria by which a conditional use is reviewed and the findings have been available and provided to the Planning Commission as well as the public. So I won't go through those in detail to save us time. The first page of my staff report lists, all the comments that we received mainly from city staff. And I want to make sure that you saw or were aware of two items that didn't come out in the earliest versions. One was a February 4th letter from Jonah Dart McLean, an email regarding questions that Angelina posed regarding the park, and his answer as an experienced park staff manager in Astoria and regarding public parks. Was that included in the packet?
No, I
It's
forgot
too
I
late.
had that.
Well, it was too late. It was Friday afternoon. So I'll be able to just quickly tell you what he said. And then on the 7th, there was a letter from Linda Weiss, who I believe is here. With a suggestion on if restrooms have to be installed and there's no budget for them and the city decides to go with portables, she suggested maybe putting a wood structure around it to reduce the unsightly outhouse type, not outhouse, but you know what I mean. And so those are the two items that you haven't seen, and we'll get back to that. Okay, just real quick, although the park is almost 0.7 acres, this playground site is 4,300 square feet. It's small, and it's located between some commercial buildings on the west and residential to the south and the east. Which is also direct access to A Street. Surrounding uses, there's 2 dwellings, 5 dwellings to the south, 2 dwellings to the east. 5 to the south and 3 commercial uses to the west. Now, the park is considered a community park, and it's supposedly serving about a half a mile to 5 miles in terms of its who visits it and who it's serving. It's really serving all of Gearhart. And it's actually much smaller than that 5 to half an acre to 5 miles distance, but we'll call it a more of a neighborhood park that's serving the whole community. Currently, the plan is for no restrooms and no lights. Now, there may be something I don't know that's been updated, but that's the plan at the moment, and I'll come back to that. Because the site is, the improvement that is considered new development, and that's because it's, quote, making a material change in the use or appearance of a structure or land, then it's within a medium scenario tsunami inundation event, and therefore it's subject to those tsunami inundation standards. And we'll talk about that briefly. Let's see. When we asked the building, police, fire, city administrator, and then we received some comments from Astoria, some questions were raised. You should have all that material. But the question is, do we need, well, there is going to be an ADA parking space off of A Street, but do we need drinking water to the site? And do we need restrooms on the site? And according to the Astoria planner, no restrooms would be required in their experience, and unless it's required by ADA regulations. And also no water, and the thinking was maybe a drinking fountain is required unless it's required by city code. And I don't think that's the case. So those were some big ifs in this layout that at this time, we don't think are required. The city doesn't necessarily have this budgeted in advance. This was just meant to replace some very needed play equipment that was removed. And to try and get through a full site development, it's just not budgeted. And then one other question that came up was, what hours of operation would this park be functioning, and do we need lighting? And So the decision has so far been made by the city staff, both for enforcement and cost and impacts of lights, is that there will be no lighting because the park will be open from dawn to dusk. And that's, of course, requires signage like we do in our other parks. There is required to be a sign to hours of operation and other pertinent information. Evacuation routes being the other one. There has to be a directional aspect of the sign that tells you where to go in the event of a tsunami. And those are the main issues that we think popped up in the preliminary comments that came back to us before we wrote the staff report. A couple other topics is, okay, so we have an ADA parking space on A Street where you drive right in from A Street, but do we need an ADA access sidewalk from Pacific Way into the park? Because the parking primarily should be the parking on Pacific Way, which is already there, rather than in the neighborhood on A Street. And so now the city administrator is talking about, along with an active resident, Candace Smith has helped with a design, I think, to put in a sloped ADA ramp. This is at the top of page 3, item number 3. A sloped ADA ramp from Pacific Way may be considered in a future phase once the park is developed. And so it would come off of the sidewalk and come down to the level in a gradual manner. Now, we'll have to double check with Chad if that's something that we think we need to do now, or that would come along as the park develops. Because again, it's turning into a much bigger project than just replacing the school equipment. Okay, now, when you're looking at a conditional use permit, that requires looking at all the comprehensive plan policies. It requires looking at the park zone. It requires looking at the tsunami hazard overlay requirements, the transportation improvements that our code requires, traffic impact analysis, and all of that is in here. I'd be happy to answer any questions. The one tsunami zone requirement is that nothing can be built in that park that has a capacity of 300 or more people. So we know we're not doing that now with this play structure. Just in superficial kind of summary on the street improvements, Pacific Way is in good condition. It has an 8-foot sidewalk and it has parking and it has a curb. So no improvements to that street would be triggered by this. And A Street, like most of our local residential streets, is a wide right of way, but we have grassy side areas, mostly grassy, for pedestrians, and wide enough space for pedestrians to walk, with no plans for putting in sidewalks and curbs and gutters and street lights and other kinds of urban street improvements. So nothing needs to change on A Street or Pacific Way. The proposal does not trigger a traffic impact analysis. And because the size is so small that it doesn't even get on the, it doesn't even get to the minimum threshold. The city pedestrian access and circulation and bike parking standards require there be a 4-space bicycle rack. That's a good idea. That's in the conditions. What else? The off-street parking requires, let's see, no off-street parking for a public park, according to the Gerhardt zoning ordinance, except for an ADA stall per federal regulations, and that's shown on the drawing. No landscaping is required in a public park. So those are the standard zoning issues that we would be addressing, and anything that's required, you'll see in the conditions of approval that's not already in the design. The conditional use criteria are all listed as to why this is a good idea, or how might it not comply with our comprehensive plan, which goes from page 7, 8, 9, and 10, with findings and applicable policies. And the obvious thing here is the city will recognize the importance of its neighborhood parks and the need to protect them from negative impacts, and to discourage increased levels of traffic and similar disruptions. And so, of course, that's the residential development policy that we're always trying to maintain. And there may be slight increases in traffic on A Street, although there's no formal parking there, except what we will be putting in. And it's likely the vast majority of cars will come off of, will park on Pacific Way and approach the park from that side because of the sidewalk, the parking, the accessibility is much better. But for other impacts, that's one reason the city decided they don't want to be open at night. That will have reduce the impact on the neighbors and without a need for lighting. So limiting it to daytime hours is recommended. The other obvious goal is that the city encourages further development of recreational facilities in the Gerhardt area commensurate with air, water, land, environmental, and scenic resources. And of course, this is enhancing what is now basically a park of grass only. And so we're beginning to develop Centennial Park and actually have recreational facilities in there available to our residents. Well, I think I'll stop on the policies. You've got them all, and I'm just probably telling you something you already know. If there's any questions when we get to the end. The main thing is this is zoned park, and it is a conditional use, and that's for the protection of the neighborhood, to be able to get the notice and to be able to see what's going on and be able to make their comments. And so that's why we're here. Even though it seemed like a simple project that needed to be done to replace the school facilities. In the end, page 12, the staff recommends you approve this conditional use permit for the play structures to be installed in the park with the conditions listed on page 12, 13, and 13, which are to have a statement in the record that nothing in that park can house a capacity of 300 or more people. If there's going to be water line or any use of water, the plans should identify the existing water easement on the site, because there is water to the site for irrigation. And determine if drinking water is required is still listed there. And the determination that we have so far is that drinking water is not required unless somebody has something to add to that tonight, any staff or anyone else, in which case we'd want to modify number 2. Number 3 is to develop a drainage grading plan if it's determined necessary to ensure the runoff on the site does not drain onto adjoining property, because that was mentioned by a couple of staff members, I think someone from Public Works. Number 4 is that the city determine if an on-site restroom is required by the state, and if so, be modified to include one. You know, without hours of research, we don't think one is required unless it's required by ADA, by federal law. And so again, we need to either put that one to rest or find out if there's any new information, but according to the city of Astoria, parks planners not, unless in our code it is. The applicant number 5 would modify the plans to illustrate the ADA compliant paved parking stall on A Street, as well as a 5-foot sidewalk from Pacific Way into the level portion of the park. And we think that's required, the walkway to get from Pacific Way down, but and I believe the city administrator has a plan to do that, and I think it would be within this budget, but we need to confirm that tonight. And then an outdoor signage permit should be put together that depicts the sign design and its location on the property and denotes the park name, the daylight hours of operation, and tsunami evacuation information. Item C there is to add a 4-stall bicycle rack design and location on the site. Item D is to provide a description and location of containment method around the perimeter to retain bark chips so they don't get spread all over the place. And item E is to add a garbage container near the play structure and throw in a wooden bench for the old grandmothers that have to sit there and wait for the kids to play. So with that, that would be the end of my summary of the staff report for now. And if there's any questions, the commission, or if just Chad, maybe as staff want to add anything to what I said or clarify anything?
Well, isn't the staff the applicant, so they would be
Yeah.
talking? Okay, so are there any questions from commissioners to Carol about what she's just reported?
Yes,
Yes. Is that you,
But-
David?
I have questions, yes, but go to other people first, please.
I don't see anything from Russ. I don't see anything from Sharon. Sharon, did you have a question for Carol?
I have several questions. Just in general, I don't know if this is the place to insert them or not. So you can tell me to be quiet if I'm in the wrong spot in this. One question is the wood chips that are going to be used, or it's called engineered redwood. And I just wondered what that is. What is engineered redwood?
And I can answer that if you don't
Okay.
mind. So it's actually what they're looking at is engineered cedar chips is what we would like to use, not necessarily the redwood. Cedar chips seem to work out a lot better around here. The engineered factor of it is the size, the sharpness. They have to actually pick out a certain type of chip so that it doesn't injure anybody as they're playing on it. So there's a sifting process and a selection process, which makes them a little bit more expensive than just normal wood chips.
And are they treated with anything, Chad?
No, I don't believe that the wood chips are treated with anything. Neither is the play structure itself.
Okay, great. And I'll save the rest of my comments for later on. That was just the question I had.
Sure, thank you, Sharon. David, are you ready now?
My first question is about paragraph 3A, number 1. Carol was talking about defining the open hours as daylight time, not daylight hours. I'm concerned. She mentioned both conditions in her presentation. One was daylight hours open, and one was daytime hours open.
Oh.
I think it should be clarified that we can confine the open hours to daylight hours, which vary during the year. So it's closed earlier in the winter and open later in the winter. It's got longer hours in the nicer weather parts of the year. My second question is, what percentage of the property is developed and what percentage is undeveloped? It's a large open area there that has been used often by the Gerhardt Homeowners Association for public gatherings. If playground equipment takes up a significant portion of that property, that would kind of impact future gatherings. My third question is the city proposing this development and paying for it? And if so, is that a budget item or is that something that's going to go to the voters?
Okay, I think I can answer those and Chad can give me numbers if need be. You're right. I'm sorry about the daylight. What I meant to say, and I think I said it out loud, but maybe didn't get in the words here, is dawn to dusk. Does that fit
Right.
your? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so item 5B should say a signage that depicts hours of operation from dawn to dusk,
That way you can cover the whole year with just a
Yeah.
simple sentence like that.
which is what I meant. Okay, and so somebody has a calculator really handy. 4,300 square feet out of 0.69 acres, or let's just say 0.7 is
30,000 square feet.
30,000.
Mhm.
What?
Is developed.
5,000 of it is developed.
No, wait, 30,000 is 0.69, right?
Yeah, so the
Okay,
lot
thank you.
size that is undeveloped park right now is 30,000 square feet. And this is looking at about 4,300 square feet versus
Right.
development.
So it's, 5%, 10,
Okay.
It's a little
Yeah.
over 10.
a little over 10. And then, what was your third question?
It was about financing, and whether that's through taxpayer or whether taxpayers are going to weigh in on whether they want to finance this.
Most of it was all donations so far. Now, there will be new costs associated with this review and requirements for sidewalk. So Chad, can you take it?
And restrooms.
Well, I don't think we're building restrooms, but I don't think we're required to. But if the ADA walkway is required from Pacific Way, then that will be a cost that has to be determined. It will be in the city budget, and the city has already done a fundraiser as well as residents to create a dollar amount that I don't have the exact.
And I can speak about that if you like.
Okay,
Okay, if I may, before Chad speaks, I can already identify two additional costs here. One is if someone somewhere requires a restroom, it would have to be compliant, ADA compliant. Number two expense would be garbage disposal and pickup and that kind of thing. So there would definitely be a garbage container and
Mhm.
there would be disposal of garbage at the park. So there's expenses there. So I think there's some open-ended questions in your findings here, Carol, that are leaving some things up that we can't answer right now, like ADA compliant this or restroom requirement there, which could impact some costs during the process.
and I would only reply quickly before Chad can add some detail, is that from the research that we did thus far, the restrooms are not required. Well, you're right. If ADA requires it, I don't, as far as we know from the city of Astoria, neither drinking water nor restrooms are required. And that was helpful information from a parks department up there who's built parks. Chad?
Thank you. So you talked about the size. The dollar amounts that we have for this is the city council has already moved forward with providing $60,000 or purchasing $60,000 worth of equipment. So the equipment is being manufactured already. And we did that before a January price increase that occurred that would have increased the cost quite significant. We can still back out with some things, but we were wanting to get things going for now. As far as the donation amounts, we received over $33,000 in donations from the public. $33,000 came from the residents of Gearhart, people that live outside of Gearhart, people that visit Gearhart. But another big chunk of that I think is really important is the $12,273 that Berkeley Sturgill raised. Berkeley is a young lady who saw an issue when the Gearhart grade school was being moved, the kids being moved anyway. And with that, the grade school always intended on keeping their newer play equipment. It was never offered to the city of Gearhart. It was never a part of the purchase. So that new equipment that was installed on the west side of the school near the overhang was always intended to go up. What Mr. Maury talked to us, and he asked us if we were interested in the other equipment near the back part of the facility and whether or not we could reuse it. And upon inspection with my public works and some others, we decided that that just wasn't safe equipment. And there was, of course, a reason why the school didn't move it as well. They didn't take it with them because they thought that they couldn't use it. And we just, it was a little older. So Berkeley Sturgill noticed this and thought kids need somewhere to play. She did the quarter challenge and challenged people to bring in quarters so that she could wrap the Seaside High School track in quarters laid end to end. And I thought that was really clever. And so her family, her friends, and some helpers got together, raised these quarters. A lot of them were dropped off at Windermere. They organized it. They got these people around. And I think that they were working on their third lap of quarters when they gave up because of how much money was out there. As a matter of fact, I heard stories that they actually brought in a generator and a vacuum to clean it all up because they got tired of picking them up after they were done. But she raised $12,273 in that. And we've been keeping Berkeley kind of into this. And her parents actually called me when she looked at the previous plan and says, you know, hey guys, you forgot the slide. So we looked at the design again and added a facility that had the slide because we're trying to hit kids from a young age, you know, the 5 range and a little bit younger, you know, kids will use that up into, you know, 14, 12 and 14. It's a hard area to hit, but we think we've accomplished that. So the funds that we've raised, $33,000, that leaves the city with about $32,000. That doesn't include the little wall that we want to put along there or any of the trails. But we did receive the American Rescue Act funds as well. And we put some of that infrastructure money away for parks. So currently we have just over $100,000 in our parks budget. So that taxpayer money that's come from the federal government and mixed in with some taxpayer money that was already there from the previous budgeting area, that's how this park will be paid for.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Russ, are you talking and you're not unmuted?
Russ, you're muted.
Russ, you're muted. Angelina, can you unmute him?
I'm working on that now.
I did. He's got to accept it.
We could go to sign language.
Here
Is
we
that
go. There we
unmuted
go.
now?
You're good.
Oh, I think you got to do it one more time, Russ. Try one
Again,
more time. We had you for a second.
Yeah, they
there you go.
Unmute?
There you go.
You're
There we
good.
go.
I'm unmuted?
You're
Yeah.
unmuted.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, the question was what is a conditional use permit? We're discussing how valid this project is. I think it's a very valid project, but you know, giving the conditions that Carol's mentioning, where I'd like to not see a restroom nor water, make it just basic playground. But if we approved it as a conditional use, then is that when the neighbors all come in and said, we don't want this and yada, yada, yada? Or what's the process?
Well, the process of the conditional use permit is right now. I mean, this is the process to present it to the planning commission. We sent notice to the neighbors and the opportunity for the input to come back to the city as to whether or not it should be approved. We are in the conditional use process.
Oh,
And a
right now,
conditional
okay.
use, conditional use means that you can add conditions to a use that fits the zone.
I got you. Okay. Yeah, I'm all for it. The only concern I have is that we have, your rec shows the, whatever it is, not a 50 by 100, but essentially a 50 by 100 on A. If we have is the ramp something coming from Pacific Way? Is that something we don't do until ADA says we have to, or are we talking about that as a done deal?
Chad?
I'd be happy to answer that. Thank you, Commissioner Russ. So nothing is a done deal, and that's why we're kind of developing the park as we are on a minimal basis. What I'm trying to concentrate on is just this play area, but thinking about what the future can be without a solid plan. We know that this has been called Gearhart's living area. And we know that there's people that are interested in putting some play equipment here. It's been talked about in the park's master planning process. And that this would be a good location for it. And there's definitely a need, and it was definitely put forward by some of the kids, including Berkeley Sturgill, here to move forward. And so we're going with that energy. But we don't want to develop this so much to where we make a lot of decisions for what the future park is going to be without it being planned by the community. We know we want some play equipment, but we're not sure exactly how we're going to do the rest of it. So what I would advocate for, and what legally I think that we're going to be able to do, is not worry about the ADA path from Pacific Way yet, because we can provide that with an ADA parking lot on the south side near the Trails End Arts Center side.
Okay.
So we can worry about that as the design kind of comes up. And we've been working with Candace Smith, who has a lot of wonderful ideas that she wants to present to the community. And I've listened to those, and I've listened to a lot of other people. So by developing this park back in this section, we're leaving the majority alone to future develop the way that you want to see it. The things that we will have to accomplish first, though, we can put a water.
Dad,
Yes.
are you testifying now?
No, I guess I was, but
All of
didn't
a
feel like
sudden-
it until just now, but yeah.
all of a sudden you moved from back to another place, and you're on the agenda.
Sorry about that, ma'am. Did I answer your question, Russ?
This is Terry. Are we asking questions or are we making comments?
No, we're all it was supposed to be was questions specifically for Carol about anything in the report that we did not understand, like the difference between daylight and daytime. But
So I
beyond that,
guess
no,
we
we're not
got into
discussing.
comment.
And from Chad, who knows some of the answers. that I-
I'm waiting for discussion.
Okay, we'll get to discussion soon enough. All right. Chad or Angelina. Angelina is actually the applicant. Is she going to speak, or is Chad going to speak? Because it's now time for the applicant to speak.
I think we've heard from the applicant.
I think Chad should talk. He knows a lot more about it. However, I did want to mention one thing about the ADA. I think having the ADA parking space down on A Street would be more feasible, not only for somebody who has, needs an ADA accessible area. It's closer to the park. It's not as far away. It's more convenient, and it offers an ADA parking spot as well for the Trails End Art Association.
But aren't we just approving the conditional use permit and all these things will be hashed out later?
No, we can approve it with the conditions. There are multiple conditions that
Right,
Carol
I
shared with us
understand that.
that would be there. We can improve it that way. Let's hear
Right.
from Chad. Chad, would you like to, it's time for the applicant's report. Would you like to say anything more?
That we haven't heard.
I hear that, Counselor Terry, or Commissioner Terry, I hear that. So we know it's the living room. We know kind of how we're trying to develop it. We don't need to do an ADA from Pacific Way yet, but eventually we probably will, to give more people access to the park from that side, and we can determine that at a later date. Restrooms we don't need right now, but I think we should be thinking about those. And depending on what happens with the future of the fire station, restrooms may be more appropriate up into that area for that community. I think that's something we should accomplish. We don't have to right now. Drainage issue, let's see here, other questions that came up. Drainage issues we're working on. That park was used heavily in 2007 during the big storm, the Great Coastal Gale. And that's when it was kind of destroyed about 14 years ago. And the grass just, the material that was on top of that really damaged that park. So what we want to do is sooner than later actually grade this park out to be pretty well even, develop this so that drainage works and so that we don't do anything to compromise the Trails and Arch Association septic system. So we know where we want to be. We don't want to compromise that. We want that to continue to work well. Grade it out, plant some new grass there, get this particular playground equipment in and do it well, and then develop the park over time as the park's master plan and the community deem that they'd like to develop it. The only thing that we need to add that's not in the in this is a small stem wall to contain bark chips to make sure things don't go out. We need to get the ADA parking. We want to enhance what the Trail End Park Arts Association is doing. We understand there will be an impact to them and people will park in some of their areas. So that's something we're thinking about. We know we need at least one ADA. We may provide 2 ADA parking spaces so that the Trails End Arts Center could also use that. We want to try to get people to the Arts Center as well, because that is a place, you know, when they're raising money and selling art and doing things and being a wonderful part of this community, we want the park to enhance it. So this very small part is what we're talking about, this 50 by 88. Drinking water is in the future if we want it to be. It's easy to do. Restrooms, we could do that as well. Dawn to dusk, I don't think I want to put any restrictions on dawn to dusk at this moment. I've had some recent conversations with the police chief. It would be a one-off park. I don't know that we're going to need to put these times on there. I would say that let's develop it slowly, get this portion going, see how it works, and then look at making any policy changes for hours of operations in the future, but not now. Let's see, daylight hours, we talked about that. The 2 additional costs, garbage disposal, we've talked about that, David. We're going to incorporate that into what we do. There will be a small minor expense to that. And care and maintenance of this particular facility is going to be something that's ongoing, but we chose the type of material that would work really well in this environment. And this is by a company called Compan. And the city council was able to see kind of some of these items. These items are based mostly in wood. It's called Robina wood. It's a hardwood. I'm going to get to a picture that maybe is not so blown out here. It's going to be made out of this Robina wood, which is very hard, insect resistant. It's resilient itself to the weather. There's no treatment on the outside of it. We can get some staining done on it, but I don't think we're going to do that. We're going to leave it natural so far. It installs underground with concrete like everything else. It's maintainable and fixable. And it's just a little different than you've seen anywhere else. This particular image here, if you can see, that's called the parkour area. It's just ropes and things for kids to climb on. It's made to last quite a long time, to be serviceable. And I think it'll be a unique look that we haven't seen in any of the other parks in this area. I think that answered most of the questions.
Okay, all right. Did we have any questions for the applicant about what he's reported? I don't see any. Are there any proponents of this out there in the audience? You need to speak up. I can't see if you are interested. Hearing,
It looks like Sharon's raising her hand.
Sharon's not a proponent. She's,
No, that was from before. Sorry.
oh, okay.
Okay. I got it.
Okay. I don't think, are there any opponents to it? Are there any people that like neutral comments?
It looks like
Yes.
Tom.
Yeah, Tom Teese, 292
Hi, Tom.
Woodland Avenue.
Okay. Are you a neutral?
I'm a neutral. I would really love to see it. I think it's something that's needed. But in listening tonight, it kind of scares me putting it where it is, where there's a possibility we might have to put an expensive restrooms in at some time in the future, and ADA ramp and everything. And I hate to say this because I know it's going to happen, but we have another park that is level with the road level almost. And we also have bathrooms just across the street from the park. And that's up at the ocean front. And it just seems like that it would get used well up there by people stopping and going to the beach and everything. But it just kind of bothers me. I never thought about having restrooms and everything, but if that comes up in the future, they aren't cheap. I know Seaside years ago on Avenue U put restrooms in down at the end of Avenue U. They installed them. There was such an outcry, they had to take them down. And I believe those restrooms cost at that time $60,000. So that's all I have to say. I'm for it, whether it goes there or not, or wherever. Just, I wanted to put that out.
Tom, can I have you state your address again?
Okay, 292 Woodland Avenue, Gerhart.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no problem.
I'm sorry, I forgot to ask that, Angelina. It's been so long since we've had someone to say something. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to say anything? Okay, applicant, we don't really have a rebuttal. Tom's just concerned about the restrooms, and I think that's a concern that we all have. And knowing that his point of, hey, I'm at the beach and, I'm on the way to the beach, not using the park, but I'll use the restroom. So is there anything else you want to say, Chad?
No.
No.
Well, yeah, I guess, again, there's not a requirement for restrooms here. It's what the community thinks that is best for its future. I think eventually Gerhart will need some restrooms also available more downtown. We get a lot of call for them here at City Hall, for people that are using the local businesses as well. And depending on what's going on with the past fire station site, that might be a perfect place for it. Or if we do a small remodel on the current City Hall, that's maybe something we can add some outside access restrooms as well. And I don't disagree with Tom. They would be expensive when they came or when we did it. But now that we're getting closer to a parks master plan and we're getting that finished, grant writing is going to be a lot easier for us. And we've already begun using that as in a draft, in its draft form to say, we're working on this plan. This is why we need this grant. And we have applied for some more monies to go towards this park with some grants. And we're just waiting to hear from them as well. Nothing huge, but just some small things. So duly noted. I get that.
Hey, awesome. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. It is now time for that discussion amongst commissioners. I will start with the first person on my screen, and that is Sharon. Sharon, do you have anything you'd like to say?
I just had a couple thoughts about this. Number one, I really like Linda Weiss's suggestion, perhaps temporarily, putting a porta potty in there, maybe one of the larger ones for that fit, everybody. And then putting up, a wooden structure around it for aesthetics sake. I think that's a great compromise. As a person who uses the Ridge Path probably 5 days a week, and doesn't want to bother the city hall folks by using their bathroom, I would love to have some bathrooms somewhere along there. That's just my personal. Secondly, in looking at the playground equipment, I'm sort of picturing kids using it, and any playground that I've ever been to, kids tend to be sort of running around and interacting with each other. And I was a little worried about the balance bar being a trip hazard. So I just wanted to put that out there. And then my last thought was the possibility of having a canopy over this, so that kids could play when it was raining. That's all.
Okay, thank you. David, you're next on my screen.
I only had one more comment to make for everybody to consider, that regarding the aging populace of Gerhardt and the state of Oregon and the United States, we're aging. And that process, that aging process, could probably increase the need for more than one ADA parking space. I've seen plenty of businesses with the required number of handicap required parking spaces, and they're all full, like especially at busy times of their day. So I think starting out with one ADA parking space that would be shared with the Trails End and the park might be a conflict right there. So I'm thinking we're probably going to start out with 2 parking spaces on A Street. Just a comment.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Next on my screen, Russ.
Yes, I'm kind of on Chad's page on this. I think we build it minimalist without the, to me, the restroom thing is just an attraction of people hanging out. Even, it's a dawn to dusk thing, but somebody's going to hang out there post dusk or pre-dawn. And so I say keep it simple, and as the park plan, as that Centennial Park, if we're calling it that, develops, there may be a time for something more than what we're talking about tonight.
Okay. Okay. Dawn, you're next on my screen.
Thank you. I have a couple comments. The restrooms, as a parent going to a playground and the kids running around losing their minds and the time, they're gonna have to go to the bathroom. So we have 2 options. We can have them go to the bathroom in the park, or we can have them go to the bathroom in a restroom. I mean, that's what's going to happen. And then further, that my kids happen to be grown now, but I have many friends who have younger kids, and what they're going to say when we put the park up with no restroom is like, what are you doing? You're kidding me. So I understand that policy wise, maybe that's something we can address at, at some point down the road, but that's just, I think, kind of common sense that if we want people to use it, that not just the kids, but even the parents who are sitting there encouraging their kids to play, it's kind of almost a decent thing to do, I think. The other thing is we've kind of referred to this place as this park as 3 different things. And I don't know if it's the planning commission's role to name the park or whom, but maybe it's time to actually come up with a name and just let's settle that. That's what I have. Thank you.
Good comment, Dawn.
Yeah, thank you. That particular issue, Dawn, was something that was actually in the park's master plan about getting a name for that park. So we'll deal with that in a few minutes. Terry, do you have something to say?
I certainly do.
Okay.
My daughter lives in San Francisco. She has three grandchildren, and I have probably spent more time in pocket parks in San Francisco that have playgrounds than all of you combined. And I'm a huge fan of playgrounds for children. As far as drinking fountains, if you look at kids now who are young, hardly any of them walk out the door without a water bottle. As far as to going to the bathroom, just because they're in a park doesn't mean it's going to have to go to a bathroom. They have to go to a bathroom whether they're in a park or not. And most of these kids are not going to be more than 3 or 4 minutes away from home. And I am a huge fan of this. I don't think you need drinking fountains. I don't think you need bathrooms. And also, when it comes to financing, we live in probably one of the wealthiest places in all of Oregon. And if there isn't a reason that we can raise $100,000 or whatever it takes to finance this, I just can't believe it. I'm a huge fan of this, and I think that we should do it. We don't need bathrooms unless it's required, and it doesn't sound like it is, or drinking fountains. And it's kind of like we're buying a coffee pot and trying to decide what color it is. And so I only have one question. Is donations that we make, are they tax deductible? And if they are, we need to get the word out, because we need to know who writes the check to and the tax ID number. And the last thing, I want to make a motion to approve this conditional use permit with the conditions.
Terry, we've still got one commissioner that hasn't speak? Yeah.
Okay, then after that commissioner speaks, I will make the motion again.
Okay. That happens to be me.
Oh, okay.
You know, Terry, I've always got something to say. I think that Chad addressed it when he talked, if I heard him right, that the thing with the hours is something that you would not include on the sign. Is that correct, Chad?
Yeah, at the moment, I would like to grow into the situation and see how it works and respond after we have a little time with it.
Okay. Yeah, that was my one concern. Yeah, I think the park is great. Will there be, my only other concern is that the stop signs at Pacific and Cottage are suggestions. And I see a lot of people run, that people run through those stop signs. Are we going to be putting up any signage that might say children at play or watch out for children? Because I would hate to think that a child is on the way to the park and something happens to him, because it's just a sad situation that those stop signs are just not obeyed. Is there any possibility of that, Chad?
Yes, Madam President, we can look at some appropriate signage. We do want the kids to be safe, so that's something that's top of our mind. We don't have anything planned at the moment.
Yeah, that would be something that I would appreciate you looking into. You know, whether it's one of those silly little green guys or something to let people know that there are children there and they're playing and they don't always look when they're crossing the street. Okay, yes, Carol.
Before Commissioner Graff makes a motion, can I review the changes to the conditions that I have noted?
Yes, please.
Okay. Page 12, no change until number 5, which says the applicant shall modify the plans to include A, illustrate the details of an ADA compliant paved parking stall on A Street. Scratch out as well as an ADA 5-foot walkway from Pacific Way into the level portion of the park. B, apply for an outdoor signage permit that depicts the sign design, its location on the property, and denotes, we don't have a name yet. Well, denotes the park name, cross out any reference to hours, and leave in and tsunami evacuation information. So the sign is simply the name of the park with evacuation directionals. As far as I can tell from what's being said here so far. Item C is the same. Item D is the bicycle. Item D is provide a description of a containment method around perimeter to retain bark chips. Remains the same. And I can put in untreated cedar bark chips if that makes that more clear. And then item E is the same, add a garbage container near the equipment area, provide a wooden bench near the equipment for parents and friends. Okay, and so what's not being added is what we've discussed, I think. I think that covers it, unless some of the suggestions that were made by the commissioners are to be added. That being a second ADA space, a weather canopy, the name of the park, which is in the plans for the park plan. So I think the city council has to do that. I think that's it.
I think your amendments are fine, your changes, Carol.
Yeah, I think the other ones are suggestions, and they're good suggestions as we move forward with it.
Okay,
So I
Okay.
make a motion to approve the conditional use permit subject to the conditions as amended by Carol.
Okay. Terry has made a motion to approve it with the conditions that Carol has amended. Is there a second?
A second.
Was that Russ? Russ
Second
seconded?
from Taggart, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just need to see who it was. Is there any further discussion before we vote?
Question
Yes.
about the name of the park. When will that come up, I wonder?
That should be decided by the city council.
The city council, okay.
Yeah, it is in the parks master plan to have that name established by the city council, actually.
Yes, it does need to be defined by
Right.
an agreed upon name.
Right. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Dawn.
I have one question about the bathroom. If it just determined at a later point, is it possible to add that after it's already implemented and a policy is created? Chad or Carol?
I can answer that. I think it's something that we are already eyeballing. And the COVID pandemic was a big part of this. It really limited the amount of places where people could use a restroom if they needed to. One of the things the city is trying to do now is we're getting ready to remove the old official building across the way here. This is a piece of property that the city will be in negotiation for ownership here soon. There is the possibility of us putting a couple of ADA porta potties with fencing built around it, as we had for many, many years up at the tennis courts before it was developed into a water treatment facility, maybe even something a little bit nicer. So I think that that's likely what we're going to do anyway moving forward. But yeah, let's keep an eye on it and be in tune to that.
Thank you.
Okay. We ready? All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right, so we have approved it. We have got through that.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
for your participation. We will now move on to the last item on our agenda, and my cat has decided to sit on top of the agenda. And he
Is
likes,
that the cat?
my cat likes Zoom meetings. He likes them a lot. And now my cat is going to move. So we have 21-04 CP.ZTA draft Gearhart Parks Master Plan and continuation discussion and recommendation to City Council. We have adjusted the parks plan. We have been looking at this since November, October.
Over.
Okay. So you received in the last package that Angelina sent out to us, the language altered, fixed, things that Russ had brought up. Did Russ disappear?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm going, where did he go? Terry's still here. Okay.
He's still online.
John is still here, but he's okay.
I think Russ is over at the park.
Russ is over at the park. He was done. Yeah. There, John's back. Okay. So we have the parks plan. I note, and this is speaking for myself only, that with paring down a lot of the language, I've only found one other thing that bothers me in it. But it is not for me to speak. I am, we need to approve it. We need to adjust any other thing that maybe Carol has missed, or because Carol tried very hard to get everything in there and fix it. Eliminate a lot of the verbiage, clarify. So is there anything coming from the other commissioners first?
I have a question to Carol. This is Terry speaking.
Yes.
Carol, are you there?
Yes.
I'm wondering if there's something that conflicts two different languages in here. And the first is policy 13.19, policy 19B, and it has the verbiage trimming and pruning will be limited to hazardous or obstructive trees or limbs. And I'm wondering if that conflicts with policy number 4C, where it talks about preservation of scenic views. Is there a conflict there?
Okay, let me see if I can get where you said 4C, trimming and pruning will be limited to hazardous or obstructive trees or limbs. And
I'm wondering if that conflicts with policy number 4C, where it talks about preservation of scenic views.
Are you, I'm trying to find 4C. Oh, 4, not, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the,
3.4 policy 4 on page 12.
oh, I see, 3.4. I thought you said 4C. Okay, hold on.
And then it's
Got it.
C of that.
Yeah, got it. Okay, 3.4, policy 4, item C. Preservation of scenic views, let's see, sometimes competing public interests, including, so balancing and considering the public interests of preservation of scenic views, including views of the ocean and beaches, as well as views of the dunes themselves from within the dunes and from neighboring properties.
Does that conflict with 3.19 policy 19B, where it talks about trimming and pruning will be limited to hazardous or obstructive trees or limbs?
Okay, good question. Trees will be maintained, no trees. Okay, remember now, all these policies are only applicable to city park land, right?
Okay,
So on city parkland, trimming and pruning will be limited to hazardous or obstructive trees or limbs. And then your question is, if the city's trimming, unless you, okay, if the city's trimming on their land.
well, there's policy 3.4 policy 4 allows for trimming for preservation of scenic views, where policy 1.9 is just trimming and pruning will be limited to hazardous or obstructive tree limbs.
Yeah, that's a find.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I know last meeting we voted 5-1 or 6-1, whatever it was, to preserve the language in policy 4C to preserve scenic views. So to me, those two languages conflict with each other.
Yeah, I think you thought you took the next step, which we weren't thinking last time we went through this.
Carol.
Well,
Yeah.
it's
I
a
don't-
step that needs to be taken at this juncture.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm just trying to think about the answer. Somebody has said something.
That was me.
Yeah.
Angelina, I don't know a whole lot about this stuff. I'm still learning with you, but isn't 3.19 talking about parks and 3.4 talking about beaches?
Well, it's, okay, that's
They're
another,
kind of one and the same in some instances.
right.
You could say trimming and pruning will be limited to hazardous or obstructive or maintaining scenic views. I mean, they do conflict with each other, and you need to resolve that.
Any other responses by the commission or scenic views? Because we've said earlier, it's a balancing act of all these competing interests, right? And the dunes on city-owned parks of, what is the priority when it comes to trimming and pruning will be limited to hazardous or obstructive trees or limbs.
And so if you want to preserve your scenic view by trimming, under this, you could only do it if it's hazardous or obstructive.
Yeah,
Now, what is
I get it. I think you've caught
So
a
maybe-
really good nuanced conflict here.
It's
Maybe
better
your
to
language,
catch it now than later.
You said
exactly
it.
right, because it could be a landmine later.
Yeah,
Maybe your language could be of such that you trimming and pruning of any vegetation should not be restricted to dangerous or obstructing growth, and shall encourage scenic views wherever possible. That way I'm
Well,
saying you should not do something, but we're not saying you can't do it, but you should encourage something, because I would like to think that if there's a stunning view that a limb comes out and you get a stunning view because of that, I think that's well worth it.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with trimming these trees. When I was here a month ago, driving around Gerhard, and lots of people were having their pine trees pruned, and it wasn't hurting them at all. So
That's right.
I
okay, so the first, this B, we're trying to maintain trees wherever possible. That's the starting point. We have the size of when there's a threat. We have decisions regarding tree removal will be made by the city administrator, preferably as advised by an arborist. Trimming and pruning, maybe instead of will, will be
should
limited
not
to
be
hazard.
limited. It should not be limited to,
Well, trimming and pruning, you want to have trimming and pruning of hazardous or obstructive trees or
Well,
limbs.
the best way to solve the problem is take out the language, trimming and pruning will be limited to hazardous or obstructive trees or limbs. If you took that out, that would solve your problem.
Yeah, I instead of trying to encompass everything here and get it wrong.
Because it starts off by saying trees will be maintained as in whatever possible, as what is it? Trees will be maintained as is wherever possible. So
Yeah,
that tells you you've got to maintain your trees.
right.
And then you put in this trimming and pruning will be limited, then that really cuts the meaning out of that first sentence, because you first say you maintain it wherever possible, then you put a big restriction on it.
Yeah,
And then that conflicts with preservation of views. So if you eliminate that sentence, you're maintaining your trees where possible. And if need be, they can preserve the views. And if you do that, I have no problem with the rest of what is in here.
that makes a lot of sense to me, Carol.
how about everybody else?
Yeah,
Anyone else?
Russ thinks that makes sense.
Well, I will make a motion that we eliminate the sentence trimming and pruning will be limited to hazardous or obstructive trees or limbs.
Thank you, that helps.
Okay, you've made a motion. Terry's made a motion. Do I have a second on it?
I'll second.
David will second it. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay,
Nay,
and one votes against it. Thank you. Anything
I
else?
have one other question, Carol,
Yes,
if I
Gary.
might. Hate to be a thorn in your side. Carol, a couple times ago in your report, when we were addressing this 3.19, you had a note in there that we may need to amend some other ordinance to comply with that. Is that still the case?
Yes, and it's in my staff report I noticed from October, where we have to go back to the park zone and put the 19C standard of a 50-foot riparian setback in there.
Okay. And that
Yes.
would be the only thing that we needed to do?
That was the only thing, yeah, I'm gonna have to, as this goes to council, go back to that staff report and, get it totally up to date. But that's the only thing that I had at the time, and it's still in there that we talked about. So, back at the beginning.
Yeah, I guess the problem that I've had all along with this is that we are being asked to approve something in the parks plan that conflicts with something that's already existing. And to me, that never made sense. What would have made sense was to go what is already existing and amend it. And that way we could compare what's already there and what's here. And you can't tell us what the conflict is between two of those, but we're asking to approve this. I don't have a problem with the language with what we have taken out, but it just seemed like a funny way to do it. It seemed like the proper way would have gone to what's already existing and amended it.
Well, you're talking about policy 19
Yes.
in total.
Yes. And I go back to when you said if we adopted policy 19, then we would need to amend something that's already existing. And that never made sense to me. What would have made sense was to have a hearing on what's existing and an amendment that needed to be made to it. But now if we adopt this, then we need to go through that process. And that never made sense to me. But with eliminating this language, I would be able to approve policy 19 as
Yeah,
part
I
of the
think
park.
this has been an evolving document, and I appreciate your thinking on all the steps that we've made and the changes we've made that have caused some confusion. But part of the original problem was the comprehensive plan policies say in several places, now we're talking about the estuary and the A2 zone, that there should be a 50-foot riparian setback. And I think this is what you're talking about. And
Right.
it never made it past the comp plan into any standards. And it did make it into the zoning ordinance for the Neocoxy and the Mill Creek riparian setback, but it never made it into the estuary. And we got quite a bit of testimony against that policy from the people in the estuary area, Little Beach. And so now it's been compromised. I think the way we are today is that it will only apply to city-owned parks in the estuary.
Right.
Okay, and so the easy solution is to just go to the park zone, because that's our own zone, a city zone, and put that riparian standard in there, which we can say was meant to be in there originally through the comp plan, but we're not applying it to all the properties in the estuary, privately owned.
No, I understand.
Okay, good. Then we're on the same page. Thank you.
Finally.
That's not easy. This has been months and months and lots of pages.
And I have one question for Chad, if I might. Chad, you're the guy who has to enforce all this stuff. When you look at policy 3.19, policy 19, do you see any enforcement problems?
Let me just a second and double check here, but no, I don't think at this point, as long as we clear it up the way that we're looking at here, I think we can work with it.
Okay. All right. Thanks. That's all I have.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Terry, for your comments. Does anyone else have anything?
No.
Okay, I have one thing that bothers me. And like I said, I can read it, eliminating a lot of language. I have to find my page now, excuse me. Where is it? I see. It's policy number 15 on page 17, the B one. It's basically saying the city will use its best efforts to oppose any attempt by any governmental authority to prohibit any use of vehicles that is presently allowed on the public beach north of 10th Street. And what bothers me is it's putting the city in a position where we're saying, no matter what, the city is going to oppose it. I don't like the negative language. My other point is that we do not know what will happen down the future. We may find out the beach is the perfect roasting spot for the red-bellied sapsucker or something, I don't know. Or we could find that the oil dripping on the sand has caused pollution, is killing off all the clams. I just don't think the city should be put in a position where we're telling them they have to oppose whatever comes along. And I would like to just eliminate B.
May I expand on that just a moment, Jenny?
Yes.
It's interesting to think about the beach, because whenever anybody wants to do something about it, the city says, well, that's not our responsibility. That's state police. Now that we're talking about driving on the beach, it's becoming Gearhart's responsibility. There seems to be some kind of gaposis there to me.
Right. It's,
When we're talking about fireworks on the beach, sorry, we can't get involved in that
Right.
because that's the state police.
right,
Well, what about cars on the beach? Is that state police or Gerhardt?
precisely.
Yeah. Good question. Chad?
Especially
Could-
cars with fireworks.
Can the city prohibit, close that road, which is not, which is still city land, and cut off driving access to the beach?
I'm not sure. I think that during the COVID pandemic, when things were first starting, we're slowing down. They were closing the gates and things like that. There was a conversation that yes, health authority could probably close those beaches and things, but I don't think Gerhardt has the ability to just go ahead and close the street without a beach access at this point. And our jurisdiction is only in the roadways that we have near those condominiums. So I'm not sure that we are able to make any closures at that point. In regards to vehicles on the beach and the driving as it is done on Highway US 101 or 1 US 1, which the beach is known at, it was made a highway specifically in order to keep the beaches open to the public. It was part of that whole scenario back in the 60s and 70s. And it is out of our jurisdiction. It is under the Park and Recreation, and it is under state and the county police department. We do patrol it. So those are the facts as I know it right now.
Okay, and so if now it says really, I recall George's intent here is to use its quote, best efforts to oppose if this ever came up.
But see, I'm saying that puts the city in a position, they're telling the city they have to oppose something. The city, and like David is saying, hands off with everything, but I understand what he's doing, but I think he's putting a burden on the city and on future administrations that doesn't need to be there. We can see where up north, they've restricted some of the hours and certain months where you can't drive on the beach for all sorts of reasons. And really people driving on the beach at high tide is not a good idea, but they still do it. But it just bothered me that we were putting the city in a position where we were telling them what they had to do. And that's my only thing. It's in the future. I would like to eliminate it. Can I move that? Can I move to eliminate? I can.
And I would
Huh?
second that. I would second that, Jenny.
I move to eliminate policy number 15B. And David has seconded it.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, eliminate B, Carol.
Well done.
All right,
One more.
anything else?
Yes.
Who's talking?
Is Carol speaking to remind you that there's a letter from Bob Morey's consultant, Eric Eisman, to take out the lengthy description of his property at the school and make it read just like the other privately owned properties potentially relevant to parks planning, section 2D. Does everybody have that?
Yes, it was included in our package.
Okay,
It came after public
Yes, it did.
testimony was closed.
thank you, yes.
We did not hear during any of the public hearing
Right,
from any of them. is there an opinion out there?
I could take it to council if you want to leave it at that.
Well, the council will have public hearing, correct?
March the 2nd.
Okay. I think that would be appropriate. I don't want to set precedent accepting additional input after we've closed it from public
That's fair.
testimony.
I think that's fair. I wanted to make sure it was brought to your attention so that you knew that you have it and that you thought about it and you had any opinion. So I think you're right. That's the right thing to do.
Okay.
I'll bet you have a consensus.
Okay, we have a consensus out there. I'm seeing I can see 5 faces and Carrie's silent. So, okay, are we ready? Would someone like to make a motion?
Can I
For
help design a motion?
Oh, please,
Okay.
keep it less than a paragraph.
No, this is easy. I move to accept the latest draft, and we'll call this draft today, of the draft Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Based on the findings in the staff report of October 7th, 2021, as amended to make it current, and that's not very many amendments. And forward it to the city council.
Okay, Carol cannot make a motion. I need someone to actually make the motion.
This is Terry. I so move.
Terry has moved with the words that Carol supplied. Do I have a second?
Second,
I have a second from Russ. And Angelina, you have that motion and everything. We all know what the motion is. And is there any further discussion?
I have a question for you
Yes, Sharon.
because I'm so new to this.
Yes.
Is there any kind of a vote that can be done with reservations, or is it always just yay or nay?
The
You can
only,
abstain.
you can abstain. Yes, that was one option.
It's one of 3.
Yeah, one of 3 options. It's yes or no. If you have reservations or think, Carol, can Sharon communicate those to you, or how is the best way? Say, for instance, if Sharon has some reservations about it, what is the best way to do it?
Well, you could state your reservations in the motion if you'd like that in the record. And then vote to abstain, approve or deny. And you also can go to city council if you want to take that route and testify in their hearing.
Okay, so I can vote yay because I like most of it and then take my reservations to city council?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
Yeah.
you certainly can. You're a citizen. You can do that.
okay.
Yeah. All right. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I-
All those opposed say nay. I would like to say thank you. Oh my
Good
gosh.
night.
Okay, now we've got, let's see what else is on our agenda tonight. We have no unfinished business. We have no new business. Do we have any concerns of the commissioners? Seeing none, we have no questions for the land use attorney. It is 8:32, according to my clock. 8:33, the meeting is adjourned. Good evening. And we'll see you next month, Carol, right? We have
Let's
agenda?
talk about that for a second.
Oh, okay.
So you just finished up a really, really big project. You had a hearing tonight. There's nothing on the agenda for March. And
So,
the parks
so that
plan is
means-
going to council on March 2nd. So we're going to be busy on that with the, as well as the urban growth boundary, just giving you an option to have a spring break.
that means Carol wants to go to Mexico.
She
I second
is
the
in
motion.
Terry has already checked out of the other 5 of you there, because I know Terry will have no problem not meeting, I'm pretty sure. Is there any problem with not meeting in March with the rest of the members?
I have no objections.
No objections? No. I think, Carol, that's fine. So there will not be a meeting in March. And so see you in a couple of months. Good evening.
Okay, thank you very much
Good night, everybody.
for
Have a
all
good
your
night.
hard work. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Oh.
I heard that.
I know. I want you to record that, Angelina. That's me going,